I stepped inside. I dusted the fresh flakes from my hair as I hung my hat and coat beside the door, tucking my suitcase beneath them. The place smelled of oak and firewood and beer, and the heat of a healthy fire brought a stinging life to my cheeks. A half-dozen patrons sat scattered about 3 or 4 round, plain wooden tables. In the far corner stood a box piano, its bench unoccupied. I knew a few melodies by heart, having taken lessons all through grammar school. Mother had insisted that a lady should play an instrument. She would have fainted at the notion that I might someday put her fine culture and training to such vulgar use, especially unescorted, in this strange American tavern. I quickly turned my thoughts away from my mother's overbearing prudence before I might accidentally see reason in it. I put on my most charming smile instead and approached the barman. He raised a bushy eyebrow as I neared, which sent a ripple of wrinkles to the dome of his bald head. "Good afternoon, sir," I said, drawing up to the bar. "My name is Abigail Rook. I'm just off a boat, and I find myself a bit short on cash at present. I wonder if I could just set up a hat on your piano and play a few—" The bartender interrupted.
"It's out of service. Has been for weeks."
I must have shown my dismay because he looked sympathetic as I turned to go.
"Hold on, then."
He poured a frothy pint and slid it across the bar to me with a nod and a kindly wink.
"Have a seat for a while, miss, and wait out the snow."
I hid my surprise behind a grateful smile and took a stool at the bar beside the broken piano. I glanced around at the other patrons, hearing my mother's voice in my head again, warning me that I must look like that sort of girl, and worse, that the drunken degenerates who frequented these places would fix their eyes on me like wolves on a lost sheep. The drunken degenerates did not seem to notice me in the least, actually. Most of them looked quite pleasant, if a bit tired after a long day, and 2 of them were playing a polite game of chess toward the back of the room. Holding the pint of ale still felt strange, as though I ought to be looking nervously over my shoulder for the headmaster to appear. It was not my first drink, but I was unaccustomed to being treated as an adult. I peered at my own reflection in a frosty window. It had been scarcely a year since I had put the shores of England behind me, but the rugged young woman looking back from the glass was barely recognizable. The salty sea air had stolen some of the softness from my cheeks, and my complexion was tan, at least tan by English standards. My hair was not braided neatly and tied with ribbons, as my mother had always preferred it, but pinned up in a quick, simple bun that might have been a little too matronly if the wind had not shaken loose a few curving wisps to hang free about my collar. The girl who had fled the dormitories was gone, replaced by this unfamiliar woman. I forced my attention past the reflection to the flurries of white flakes somersaulting in the lamplight beyond. As I nursed the bitter drink, I became gradually aware of a body standing behind me. I turned slowly and nearly spilled the pint. It was the eyes, I think, that startled me the most, opened wide and staring with intense inquisition. It was the eyes, and the fact that he stood not half a pace from my stool, leaning ever so slightly in, so that our noses nearly bumped as I turned to face him. His hair was black, or very dark brown, and nearly wild, having only enough civility to point itself in a tousled heap backward, save a few errant strands that danced about his temples. He had hard cheekbones and deep circles under pale cloud-grey eyes. His eyes looked like they could be 100 lifetimes old, but he bore an otherwise young countenance, and had a fervent energy about him. I pulled back a bit to take him in. He was thin and angular, and his thick brown coat must have been as heavy as he was. It fell past his knees, and sagged with the weight of several visibly overstuffed pockets. His lapel was bordered by a long woolly scarf, which hung almost as long as the coat, and which I recognized as the one I had passed coming in. He must have doubled back to follow me. "Hello?" I managed to say, when I had regained balance atop my stool. "Can I help?"
"You're recently from the Ukraine."
It was not a question. His voice was calm.